What if I told you you could create amazing 3D text effects like this in Illustrator that are 100% editable? And no, we won't be using a 3D panel this time. In this tutorial, you'll be learning all about the appearance panel, what it is, why you should use it, and how you can use it to take your text from being regular to ridiculous. So, enough talking, let's get started. Alright, so here I am in Illustrator, and before we move into our main text, which is this right here, we're going to be learning first a little bit about the appearance panel and why you would use it. So first of all, what is the appearance panel? Well, the appearance panel is a panel in Illustrator that allows you to create multiple copies of any object and apply separate effects to each one of those copies that are all linked together. So for example, I have this happy text right here, and if you want to use this font called Movon, you can get it if you have a subscription to Envato Elements. The link will be in the description. But I have this text, and you can use any text you want, but let's say for example I wanted to create a copy of this text which was slightly above it and to the left, something like this, and I wanted to change the color of that text. Let's do like an orangish color, and I'm going to go to Effect, Stylize Drop Shadow. And I'm just going to keep this and click OK. And so now these two are together, right? You could even link them by grouping them, right, and move them around. But say you change the top text, you know, to something else. The bottom text is not going to be changed. So then you have to go in here and you have to change that text. And you'll have to do that every time you want to apply something differently, right? And let's say you wanted to apply another copy over here and change that, you know, to something else, maybe this. You know, you would have to change all of those text instances separately, right? Well, you can actually do this a lot more effectively and efficiently with the appearance panel. And so let's just open up the appearance panel first. So I'm going to click on this text and I'm going to go to Window, Appearance. You can use Shift F6 if you're on Windows. The shortcut may be the same on Mac, I'm not sure, but anyway, it'll bring up this appearance panel right here. And so the first thing you're going to notice is it says type, characters, and opacity. We'll get into those later, but let me just recreate the effect that I just did using the appearance panel, and then I'll kind of break down what's going on. So first I'm going to go down here to the bottom where it says add new field. Now my window is super stretched down because I'll be adding a lot of effects, but I'll bring it up just for now. I'm going to go to add new fill. That's going to reset the color back to black because the default fill color in the appearance panel is black. Let me just sample this blue color real quick so I can have it to copy, and then add new fill again. Click on this fill layer and then click the color picker and just paste that in there. All right, and then I'm going to add another fill layer, and I'm going to set this color to that yellowish color that I had, something like that. Now you see it looks like it's replacing the blue text, but don't worry, if I hide this yellow layer, you'll see the blue is still beneath it. And then I'm going to add one more fill layer, and I'm going to change the color to that pink we had. So let's do something like that, okay? And so now I have these three layers stacked on top of each other. So now let's start with this yellow layer. Let's hide the pink layer. With the yellow layer selected, the yellow fill layer, I'm going to go down here to Effects. I'm going to go to Stylize and Drop Shadow again. And I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to click that yellow layer again. And I'm going to go to Effects, Distort and Transform, and Transform. And I want to move this up into the left. So let's move it left and then use the vertical to move it up, okay? Click OK. Then I'm going to do something similar to the pink one. So let's unpack this yellow layer. You'll see the effects have been applied to it. Let's Control or Command on Mac and click both of those layers. Hold Alt or Option on Mac and click and drag those effects to the pink layer because I want the same effects to be on the pink layer. Turn that pink layer back on. Now for the transform, let's click in that. And let's just change this to be to the right instead and bring it up. Something maybe like that. All right. And so now watch this. It's a similar effect to what we did before, but there's a big difference here. If I were to go in and edit this text and put it back on happy, you'll see that all of those layers are now linked to one another with their drop shadows. And so we basically did the same thing we did before, but this is a lot more efficient because you can add as many effects as you want to all of these copies of your text or object layer. And so you're starting to see why the appearance panel is so useful. And so now let's move on to our main project And we're going to be recreating this text effect. It may be a little different because I dialed in very specific settings, like for the zigzag and the pucker and bloat. But we're going to basically create this same effect, and I may simplify it a little bit. But basically, let's recreate this, and then let's kind of break down what's going on in the appearance panel. So first thing I'm going to do is copy my background to this artboard over here. I'm going to Alt drag or Option drag this text over here to copy it. I'm going to go to the appearance panel, go to the options menu up here top right, and go to clear appearance. I want just nothing. We're going to start from the beginning. Let's lock our background layer just so we can work with the text. All right, so now this effect basically comes in I'm going to say about 3 or 4 parts. So I have the basic color layer. I have a gradient applied on top of that. And I have a extrusion effect of the text. And I did the same for the blue outline that's around the text. So you can see there's an orange to yellow gradient. And then I added a little bit of glow, a yellow glow on top of the gradient. And then I added this extrusion, this dark orange extrusion beneath it with a drop shadow under it. And I did basically the same thing for the blue outline. So I'll just kind of walk you through that as I'm going through it. I also have my swatches already set up here in the swatches panel, so I can quickly select the colors I'll be using. So let's click this text and open the appearance panel. So let's first create a fill. Add new fill down here at the bottom left. So let's see what's going on here in the appearance panel. The first thing you're going to see in the appearance panel is a thumbnail. This thumbnail is this little black square right here, and it's blank right now because no effects are being applied. It's just black text, so there's just a black color on this type object. Next to that, you'll see the word type. That means this object is a type or text object. Then you see there's a default stroke. It always adds a stroke of just transparent. There's no stroke color being applied. I'm gonna collapse that for now. And then it has a black fill layer, and you also see it says opacity default, which means that the blending mode is set to normal, and it's 100% opacity, which is the default for any objects. Okay, and then it's saying characters, which means the letters themselves right here, and then it has an opacity for the entire layer itself, for this entire object. And so now down here at the bottom, you'll see add new stroke, add new fill, add new effect, clear appearance, duplicate the selected item, and delete the selected item. Okay, so first let's start with this, and we want to first add an orange to yellow gradient on this happy text. So what I'm going to do is to click on this black layer because I want to add this gradient fill above. In fact, we could replace this black with a gradient. So with that black layer selected, let's go down to our gradient panel. If you don't see it here on the right side, you want to go to Window, Gradient. That's Control or Command F9 on a Mac. All right, so let's open that gradient panel, and you want to, I'm going to first click here because no gradient selected, and I'm going to select this gold dust right here. All right, now what I want to do is to actually make this a radial gradient. So the type radial, let's click here, and I want to delete some of these stops. So I'm going to click on these stops down here and just delete those. I just want to keep the orange and the yellow. I want the orange on the right side, yellow on the left side. All right, and this yellow really isn't yellow enough for me. Let's go in there and let's edit this gradient. And this yellow color, let's just bring it up to a brighter yellow. Let's bring it like here and click OK. All right, so that's working better for me, and you can mess around with the actual size of the gradient where you want it to be placed, but I'm going to keep mine where it was right there from the center over into the right side. All right, so now make sure you select your selection tool again. You can click V to get back to it, because if you go back into the appearance panel with the gradient tool selected, some of these options are going to be grayed out and you're going to be so frustrated like what's going on here. So now we have our basic gradient. The next thing I'm going to do is to add another gradient on top of this gradient, just like a yellow to transparent. So let's go to add new fill layer. And it's copying the fill from our previous layer, but we're just going to go in there, go into the gradient panel, and we want to change this orange opacity to 0%. And we want it to be a radial gradient. Actually, no, let's do a linear gradient, and then let's go to edit gradient, and let's move it from top to bottom. So maybe something like this. And then we're going to select our selection tool, go to the appearance panel, and with this fill layer that we just added selected, let's click opacity and change the blending mode to color dodge. All right, so right now that's not really doing what we want it to do, but you're going to see what's going to happen in a little bit. So go back to that fill layer, and we're going to go down here to effects, blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm liking that 15 pixels is working for me. As you can see, it kind of looks a little inset. So let's click OK. All right, so I'm liking where we're going so far. Let's just edit that gradient one more time. Let's go to edit gradient, and let's just, am I on the right one? No, let's click this one. Let's edit that gradient and bring it from maybe here to here. Yeah, just at the top. I like that. All right, let's go back to our appearance panel. All right, so now that we have that, the next thing we're going to do is to add some edge lighting to the top of this text. As you can see, if I zoom in on my text here, it has like these white edges at the top. The closer I put my mouse to it, the more it kind of adds this purple overlay, but it has like this white glow at the top. So we want to add that. So the way we're going to add that is we're going to click on our characters layer, because we want this new layer to be below all layers, and let's go to add new fill. Let's change this color to a basic white. And now we're going to go down to effects, distort and transform. And I want to move this vertically upward. So you're going to want to go into the negatives for this. 0.1 is a little too strong. Negative 0.1. Let's go to negative 0.05, and let's see how that sounds, how that looks. Okay, yes, that works a lot better for me. I like that. And we're going to move it a little bit to the right. So let's do 0.02 maybe for horizontal. And let's see how that looks. Yes, okay, that is perfection. I'm loving it. Click OK. And so basically that transform panel, by the way, just to kind of break down this transform panel, the transform panel is incredibly powerful. We'll get into it in a little bit. You'll see me do some extrusion with the transform panel, but it basically allows you to move and to scale the size of an object or copies of an object. And so right now we're just applying we're moving this object to the right and upward, and we're not creating any copies. So it's kind of basic right now, but we're going to use it for more advanced things in a little bit. So now that we have that, we have our edge glows. The next thing we're going to do is add this dark orange extrusion. And so I'm going to click on characters again, because I want this layer to be below all my other layers, and go to add new fill. And this fill color, I want to set to my dark orange. So let me just find a dark orange. I want something darker than that, to be honest. Almost like yeah, maybe this. Let's try that. And let's move this layer down. So what effect are we going to use? Transform, that's right. All right, so let's go to transform, distort and transform, and then transform. And what I'm going to do is I want to make it appear as if there's a downward extrusion. But to make it look a little bit more interesting, we want to scale down each copy of this object, right? So we want to move it downward. So let's start with vertical, and let's go into the positives to move down. So 0.1 is fine. I want to add about, let's say 9 copies. Okay, no, let's do about 5 copies. But I want them to get progressively smaller, as if they're intruding like downward and towards the center. So let's scale these down. Make sure your scale link is selected so that the proportions remain constrained. And then I'm going to go down to about 97% or something that I like. I actually like that right there, 98%. As you can see, let's go back to this 100%. When we go down to 98, so all of the copies of this object are getting smaller and going downward as each copy continues. So I like that, and I'm going to click OK because I'm okay with that. Now, The final thing we're going to do for this text before we add the blue outline is add this texture. As you can see, if I just go over here and zoom in, I have like this texture on top of the text. And so what is text without texture, right? And so I want to find my base layer, which was this one right here, this orange gradient. And I'm going to go to Effects, Texture, Texturizer. Click on that. It'll open up this panel to allow you to play around with these settings. I'm not going to go into too much detail on those now, but I'm okay with the default settings. I'm going to click OK just to add some basic texture. And you know what? I actually don't like that too much. I want it to be a little bit more defined. So let's see if we can get a stronger effect. Let's see what happens when we play around with the relief. Okay, yeah, relief is giving me a bit of a stronger effect. So let's try that one. All right, yeah, so there we go. It's a little bit more prominent now. All right, so now I am happy with my happy text. And this is the basic effect. So now, as you can imagine, we're going to create this blue outline, and we're going to use some of the same principles that we just used to create this happy text. So the first thing we want to do, of course, this blue outline is going to be beneath our text layer. So click on characters and then go to add new fill. And we want to change the color to this. I'm going to use this mid blue right here. And the first thing we want to do is to make it bigger. It's an outline, so we want to extrude it. So in order to do that, we're going to go to, with that blue layer selected, we're going to go to Effects, and we're going to go to Path, Offset Path. And let's just scroll this up until we get something we're happy with. I'm going to say, should that work? Yeah, let's do that for now. Let's click OK. And I want to move this downward somewhat, since you know our extrusion on the text is moving downward. So to move it down, remember, we're going to go to Transform. So Effects, Distort and Transform, and Transform. And we want to move it vertically downward, which would be in the positives, correct? Yep. So we got it about right there. I'm fine with that, so I'm going to click OK. The next thing I want to do is kind of change this actually to a gradient. So with that fill layer selected, let's click Gradient. And let's go into these presets right here and use blue sky. Whoops, that didn't work out the way I wanted to. Let's change this color right here to that mid blue. Go back into gradients. All right, so this is this color right here. Let's just see if we can sample this dark blue. No, that's not working. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to double click on here and just manually select this blue. So let's do something like maybe this, and change the opacity of this stop to 100%. All right, that'll work for now. And I want to edit this gradient so that it moves from the top to the bottom. Maybe something like this. Yeah. And I'm not too sold on these colors. I really like my previous color. So let me just create some squares real quick so I can get my swatches kind of back to how I want them. So let's click on swatches. And for this one, let's change it to this light blue. For this one, let's change it to a mid blue. And for this one, let's change it to a dark blue. Okay, so let's go back in there, go to Appearance, click on that blue layer and go to Gradient. And now we want to, this top blue is fine. Let's change this one. Use the eyedropper tool to select this blue. Okay, there we go. I like that a lot better. Me personally, just preferences. And now let's close that, go to Appearance. And we want to create this extrusion. Well, we also want to add some edge lighting to the top of this extruded layer. So instead of just going to add new fill, we're actually going to duplicate this fill layer because it's already offset. And so we want to make sure the offset is still applied to the next layer. So let's go here, duplicate selected item. And that'll create this layer on top of that. We want to actually deal with the one that's on the bottom. And the first thing we're going to do is to change the fill to a white. And next we're going to transform it. So we want to move it upward. It already has a transform, because we moved it down, but we want to add another transform. You don't want to edit this transform because it's already using it to move it downward. We want another one that's going to move it upward from where it currently is. So we're going to go to Effects, Distort and Transform, Transform, and we want to use the verticals, and let's move that into the negatives. Let's try 0.05. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try 0.1. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to have negative 0.05. There we go. And click OK. All right, I had to pause my video because I forgot I had my potatoes on the stove, but I am back. And so now that we have our edge lighting, I want to do one more thing with the blue outline. Let's go back and just add some texture. Let's actually add the texture from our main orange to yellow gradient. We're going to just click on this texturizer layer, hold Alt or Option on the Mac, click and drag it down to our blue gradient layer, just to add that texture in. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to do is add the extrusion on the bottom of the blue outline layer. So we're going to duplicate this layer. We're going to go to Duplicate Selected Item. And we want to use this one that's below it. And we want to also put it below our edge lighting. So let's click on that. And we're going to go to Effects, Distort and Transform, just like we've been doing before. And you know what? Actually, what we can do is to copy the extrusion from the dark orange layer. So I believe the extrusion was, yep, it's right there. So we're going to hold Alt, click and drag that down to this bottom blue layer. Yep, and there we go. We got that extrusion going on, but we're going to make it a little different. So we need to change this fill color to this darker blue. All right. And we also, let me see. Do I want it to be that dark of a blue? Maybe not. Let's brighten it up some. Static. Okay, there we go. Darker blue to maybe something like that. I also forgot to add a drop shadow under my dark orange layer. So let's click on there and go to Effects, Stylize, Drop Shadow. And there we go. Let's I'm going to be fine with that one for now. And then on our darkest blue layer, we want to I want to increase the number of copies. So because that extrusion is looking kind of sliced up, and I think it's the bottom transform, maybe this one. Yeah, here we go. Let's increase the number of copies. No, that's not helping. Let's still increase it up to 7, but let's change the distance to about 0.05 so that the space between each copy is less, but then let's do something like that for now. All right. And so now that we have the edge lighting on both parts of our text, on our outline, the last thing that remains is to kind of bend up the text. You see it's kind of jaggedy and things over here. So in order to do that, let's first minimize all these layers because we're done with those for the most part. All I did was to add this on this text. If you click it on the appearance panel show up, I added a zigzag of positive 0.04 and 9 rides per segment on the zigzags. And then the pucker and bloat was negative 10%, so towards the pucker. So for that, we're going to click on our happy text we just made, and we're going to go to the type layer. So when you're selecting the type layer, that's going to apply these effects to all of these sub layers that are in here. So that's how you create like master effects. So we're going to go to Effects, Distort and Transform, and first we want our zigzag because we want the pucker and bloat to be on top of that. And we did 0.04. You can put in whatever you know looks good to you. I was actually liking some of those crazier looking effects just now. Let me. That's kind of crazy right there. What if we did 0.02? Increase the rise per segment. So the rise per segment is going to just add more ridges into the effect. And the size is going to see how big and how intense the effect is overall. So that's pretty crazy right there. Let's go 0.08 and see how that looks. Yep, I'm going to settle with that one. And then lastly, click on that type layer again and go to Effects, Distort and Transform, Pucker and Bloat. And let's just bring this down into the negatives to get that pucker effect. Whoops. Yeah, so that pucker made my text disappear. Let's see what happens when we push it into the positives. And as you can see, my computer is kind of starting to lag now and wild out. I'm actually going to forget the pucker and bloat effect because for that amount of zigzag, it's just kind of counterintuitive. But that's overall how we get these amazing 3D looking text effects in Illustrator. And as you can see, if I were to go into this text and change it like before, right? I'm going to change it to sad. All of those text effects are being applied to the new text that we create now. You could even click and drag this and have multiple copies of your text and all types of fun little things like that. And so as you can see, it can be very powerful when you want to create this 3D text effect. So again, just kind of recapping, the first thing we did was create our base gradient layer. On top of that, we created a blurred gradient just to kind of give it a glow. Then we used another fill layer to create our edge lighting and just moved it up, and that was a pure white color. And then we added some copies which were scaled down and moved down slightly in order to create that extrusion, that illusion of extrusion. And then we did the same things for our blue outline. And so hopefully this tutorial has been helpful to you. We're going to be exploring the appearance panel more in other tutorials on how to get other effects you may have seen online. So if you found this to be helpful, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a beat. And if you have any other comments on how you've used the appearance panel, please post those and tag me on Instagram at jfosterdesigns with the hashtag JFD tutorials. Let's do that. But anyway, until next time, keep taking chances, making mistakes, and creating something incredible. So have a blessed one. See you next time.